There's a moment in life when silence isn't enough, when walking away feels like the only option, but deep down, you want one last message to hit differently. One message, just a few words, carefully chosen, that will make him realize lost the best thing he ever had. Most people get it wrong. They send angry texts, desperate messages, or long paragraphs that never get read. But what if I told you that there's a way to make him stop, reread your text, and feel something real? Not guilt, not pity, but true regret. The kind that lingers, the kind that keeps him up at night, wondering what he just let go. This isn't about playing games. This is about clarity, about showing your worth without begging for it. Because the truth is, sometimes people don't realize what they had until it's gone, but only if you remind them the right way. So, if you're ready to send a message that speaks louder than words, one that makes him feel your absence instead of just reading your text, stay with me. Because once you hit send on this, everything changes. Words have a way of leaving marks long after they've been spoken or read. A single sentence can stir up emotions, shift perspectives, or bring back memories someone thought they had buried. The right words at the right time can create a ripple effect, making someone pause, rethink, and feel the weight of what they've lost. When a message hits deep, it doesn't just get read, it lingers. It replays in the mind over and over, creating questions that weren't there before. Did I take her for granted? Did I make the right choice? Is it really over? Regret doesn't come from silence. It comes from realization. And realization comes from words that hit where they're supposed to. Most people believe time alone makes someone reflect, but that's not entirely true. Time only does its job when there's a trigger something that brings emotions to the surface. A carefully crafted message has the power to do exactly that. It can remind someone of a connection they once felt so deeply, making them second guess everything they thought they had moved on from. The brain processes emotional messages differently than everyday conversations. When words carry genuine emotion, they activate the same parts of the brain responsible for memory and decision making. That's why certain texts feel impossible to ignore. They don't just communicate, they make the reader feel. And when emotions get involved, logic starts to blur. Someone who thought they had it all figured out suddenly finds themselves rethinking their choices, questioning whether they truly appreciated what they had. A message that carries weight doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't try too hard. It's subtle yet undeniable, confident but not arrogant. It doesn't scream, look at me, but it leaves a mark strong enough to be felt. That's the difference between a text that gets dismissed and a text that changes everything. Words can shift power dynamics in an instant. The moment someone reads a message that makes them feel the loss, the energy shifts. They're no longer in control of the narrative, they're responding to it. It's no longer about whether you miss them, but about whether they can handle missing you. That's the impact of a message written with intention. Too many people waste their words on anger or desperation, not realizing that the most powerful messages are the ones that show strength, growth, and undeniable presence. It's not about proving a point. It's about delivering a message so potent that it sticks. When that happens, even the most stubborn hearts feel it. And when they do, that's when the realization finally sets in. A message that holds real impact isn't just about what it says it's about when it's sent. Timing determines whether those words hit deep or get brushed aside. When emotions are still raw, people react, not reflect. They defend instead of listening. They justify instead of understanding. A text sent too soon will get lost in the noise of ego and frustration. But a text sent at the right moment, that's when it lands exactly where it needs to. After a breakup, emotions run high. Hurt, anger, guilt, or even relief take center stage. In those early days, no one is truly thinking clearly. Everything feels exaggerated, like a storm that hasn't settled yet. This is the worst time to send a message meant to trigger realization. Not because it won't be read, but because it won't be felt the way it's supposed to be. Clarity only comes with space. Time apart allows reality to sink in. It removes distractions, dulls the noise, and makes people reflect on what they've lost. When conversations stop and silence stretches long enough, that's when the mind starts wandering. That's when the absence is noticed. And that's exactly where the perfect message fits in. People don't miss something when it's constantly in front of them. They miss it when it's gone. The more someone expects a text, the less impact it has. But when it comes at an unexpected moment after the dust has settled, when they think everything is over, that's when it hits the hardest. It's no longer just another message in the middle of a fight or a desperate attempt to reconnect. It becomes a statement, a reminder, a shift in energy. Rushing to send a text just to get a reaction usually backfires. Desperation is easy to sense, and once it's felt, the power of the message disappears. Strength lies in patience, waiting until the emotions have leveled out, until they least expect to hear from you, makes every word carry more weight. By then, they've had enough time to reflect on the good moments, to miss the presence that once felt so familiar. People often assume that silence means being forgotten, but it's actually the opposite. Silence is what makes someone question things. It's what makes them wonder why you're not reaching out, why you seem to be okay without them. And when a message finally arrives in that space of uncertainty, it doesn't just get read, it gets analyzed. It forces them to sit with their own thoughts, their own feelings, and the possibility that they truly lost something irreplaceable. The right message at the wrong time will be ignored. The right message at the perfect time, that's when it becomes impossible to forget. Not every relationship ends because of a lack of love. Sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's circumstances, and sometimes people only realize what they had once it's too late. But for that realization to happen, the focus has to shift. Instead of dwelling on the pain or the mistakes, it's about bringing back the moments that actually meant something, the moments that made everything feel real. When emotions settle and the noise fades, what stays are the memories. Not the fights, not the misunderstandings, but the moments that felt effortless. The way a simple conversation could turn into hours without noticing. The way their presence felt like a safe place in a world full of chaos. That's what leaves an imprint. That's what lingers when everything else is gone. Most people assume moving on means blocking out the past. But the mind doesn't work like that. It holds on to feelings even if they're buried under distraction. And the strongest feelings are tied to connection, real, undeniable connection, the kind that isn't easy to find again. That's where the power lies. Not in reminding them of the breakup, but in reminding them of what was real before everything fell apart. Every relationship has defining moments, moments that made it feel different from anything else. Maybe it was the way laughter came so easily, even in the middle of a bad day. Maybe it was the way silence between two people never felt uncomfortable. Maybe it was the way being together felt like home, no matter where you were. These are the details that don't just fade, they stay. And when they're brought back the right way, they create a feeling that's hard to ignore. Instead of focusing on loss, the goal is to subtly bring back the feeling of what was once good. A text that does this doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't ask for closure. It simply reminds. A simple reference to a shared experience, a mention of a small but meaningful moment, or even a line that brings back an inside joke can do more than 1,000 emotional paragraphs ever could. It speaks without forcing. It reminds without pleading. When someone is reminded of the best parts of something they once had, it creates a conflict within them. It makes them question whether they truly appreciated it when they had it. It makes them wonder if they let go of something they weren't supposed to lose. That feeling alone can be more powerful than anything said out of frustration or sadness. Words don't just tell a story, they recreate a feeling. And when that feeling resurfaces, it becomes impossible to ignore. That's when thoughts shift, emotions stir, and realization begins to take shape in ways no forced conversation ever could. Words carry weight when they are chosen with purpose. A message that sparks realization isn't long or overly emotional. It doesn't plead, it doesn't blame, and it doesn't try to reopen wounds. It speaks with quiet confidence, with a tone that says, I have nothing to prove, but I know what I brought to the table. That kind of message lingers. It makes someone stop mid-scroll, reread, and feel something unexpected. Growth changes everything. Distance, time, and self-reflection shape people in ways they never expect. A message that carries impact subtly shows that growth, it doesn't say, I've changed. It shows it. A shift in the way you speak, a calmness in your words, a certain level of peace, it all comes through in the way the message is crafted. When someone reads it and senses that you've evolved, that you're not in the same place emotionally, it forces them to see you differently. The strongest part of the message is what's left unsaid. A subtle reminder of what they lost doesn't come from saying, you lost something good. It comes from making them feel it. A line that sparks a memory, a phrase that reminds them of how things felt when they were good, or even a message that carries a quiet finale. All of these create a reaction that's impossible to ignore. The absence of bitterness makes the words hit harder. The lack of desperation makes the impact stronger. A message like this doesn't invite a response, but it often gets one. When written the right way, it places the weight of realization on the other person. It forces them to reflect without being told to. It creates a space where they have to sit with the thought that maybe, just maybe, they let go of something rare. That thought alone is powerful, and once it's planted, it doesn't go away easily. Some words get read and forgotten. Others stay in the mind long after the phone is put down. The right message doesn't chase. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply speaks. And when it speaks the truth, it finds its way exactly where it needs to go. Resentment is easy, but it rarely gets the response people hope for. A message filled with blame might feel justified in the moment, but it doesn't inspire reflection. It triggers defensiveness. When someone feels attacked, their instinct is to protect themselves, not to listen. Instead of thinking about what they lost, they focus on proving why they were right. That's why negativity doesn't create realizations, it creates resistance. A message meant to leave an impact should never come from a place of anger. Frustration clouds the message, making it more about proving a point than sparking real thought. The goal isn't to make them feel guilty. Guilt fades. Regret lingers. Regret is what makes someone rethink, what keeps them awake at night wondering if they made the wrong choice. That doesn't come from words meant to hurt, it comes from words they weren't expecting. Staying positive doesn't mean pretending everything was perfect. It means choosing to highlight the depth of what was shared rather than the mistakes. Instead of pointing out how they failed, it's about subtly showing what they walked away from. Instead of demanding acknowledgement, it's about making them feel the absence without directly saying it. That's what makes a message powerful. It shifts the energy without force. Negativity creates closure, not curiosity. When someone receives a message that attacks them, their mind shuts down. They focus on defending themselves, on finding ways to justify their actions. But when a message is calm, confident, and free of blame, it leaves them with nothing to fight against. It forces them to sit with the words, to feel their impact without being distracted by arguments or accusations. Silence carries more power than anger. A message that shows peace, that comes from a place of acceptance rather than resentment, makes a person feel the weight of their own choices. It doesn't give them an opportunity to argue. It doesn't allow them to dismiss the words as just another emotional reaction. It stays with them because it wasn't what they expected. People are more likely to reflect when they don't feel forced to. A message that highlights growth instead of loss makes someone question whether they made the right decision. It makes them wonder if they truly saw the value in what they had. That kind of realization is what leads to true regret, not because someone was told they lost something, but because they felt it for themselves. Some messages demand a response. Others create a feeling so strong that silence becomes the loudest answer of all. The right words don't need to be aggressive. They don't need to prove anything. They just need to be said in a way that makes them impossible to forget. Unexpected moments leave the deepest impact. When everything feels predictable, nothing truly stands out. But when something comes out of nowhere, when it arrives without warning, it has the power to shift emotions instantly. A message that lands at the right time when the mind is unguarded and the heart isn't prepared stays longer than any word spoken in a moment of tension. People anticipate messages right after a breakup. They expect anger, sadness, or even attempts to reconnect. When those messages arrive, they're easier to dismiss because they fit into the script they already prepared in their minds. But when the expected silence stretches longer than they thought, when days or weeks pass without a word, a certain curiosity starts to creep in. That's when an unexpected message has the power to strike the hardest. A message sent at a time when everything seems settled disrupts the rhythm. It makes someone pause, reread, and question why it came now out of nowhere. It doesn't give them time to prepare a defense. It doesn't allow them to immediately brush it off. Instead, it forces them to sit with it, to think about why it was sent, and most importantly, what it truly means. Timing isn't just about waiting, it's about strategy. Sending a message when emotions are high doesn't carry the same weight as sending it when life has seemingly moved on. When a breakup is fresh, emotions are loud, but they're also temporary. Reactions come quickly, but they don't always last. But when time has passed, when someone thinks they've figured everything out, a message arriving out of nowhere brings it all back in an instant. The key is choosing a moment when he least expects it. Not on a birthday, not on a holiday, not during a time when messages from the past are common, but on an ordinary day, in the middle of his routine, when thoughts of the past aren't actively present. That's when it works best. That's when it feels real, not forced. A message like this doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be emotional. It just has to carry a tone that makes it feel like it was sent effortlessly, like it wasn't planned or overthought. That's what makes it powerful. It's not desperate. It's not needy. It's simply a reminder, a carefully placed one that lands exactly when it's meant to. Most people chase closure, clarity, or a reaction. But the strongest messages don't chase anything. They simply appear when they're least expected and leave a mark that can't be ignored. Because when someone believes they've moved on and then suddenly, effortlessly, a message pulls them back, that's when they realize maybe they never really let go at all. Value isn't proven by chasing, begging, or convincing someone to see it. The strongest messages don't come from desperation, they come from self-assurance. They come from a place of knowing that nothing truly valuable ever begs to be noticed. When someone carries that kind of energy, it's felt. It shifts the entire dynamic. And when a message reflects that same energy, it holds more power than 1,000 emotional pleas ever could. Nothing makes a person second guess their decisions more than seeing someone thrive without them. It's not bitterness, it's not revenge, it's simply the realization that life moves forward with or without them. A message that carries confidence doesn't dwell on the past, it doesn't over-explain, and it doesn't seek validation. It speaks from a place of quiet strength that says, I know what I brought to the table, and I know my worth, whether you see it now or not. A self-assured message is short, direct, and leaves room for thought. It doesn't ask for closure. It doesn't demand an explanation. It doesn't try to fill the silence with unnecessary words. It says just enough to remind someone of what they had without making it seem like they're the center of the world. That's what makes it powerful. It shifts the attention from seeking something from them to showing that their absence has not broken anything. Desperation pushes people away. Confidence draws them in. A message that carries certainty makes someone rethink everything. It makes them wonder how you manage to let go so gracefully. It makes them feel the weight of their own absence, instead of making them believe they still have control over your emotions. That feeling alone is enough to make someone pause, question, and regret. There's no need to announce growth when it can be felt through the way a message is written. A subtle, calm tone, one that doesn't ask for anything, one that simply acknowledges the past while standing firmly in the present, has the most impact. It reminds them that while they may have walked away, so did you, and you're doing just fine. That realization alone is more powerful than any attempt to force them to see what they lost. Confidence isn't loud. It doesn't seek attention. It doesn't demand to be noticed. But when it's present, it changes everything. The right message sent with the right energy doesn't just make someone realize they lost something good. It makes them wonder if they were ever truly good enough to keep it in the first place. Growth is silent. Strength doesn't announce itself. The kind of message that lingers isn't the one that tries too hard, it's the one that speaks with quiet confidence. A few carefully chosen words can do more than 1,000 rushed ones. When someone realizes they lost something rare, they don't just see it, they feel it. And that feeling stays. Every action holds energy. Every word carries weight. When a message is sent from a place of peace rather than pain, its impact is undeniable. It shifts the power. It changes the story. It turns absence into presence, silence into realization. And sometimes that's all it takes. If this video helped, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Stay strong, stay confident, and never forget your worth.